Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for attending this virtual public meeting tonight to discuss the future land use assessment. We are looking forward to hearing your feedback on this project. I'm Jennifer Malone with the Planning Commission. I'm joined by Melissa Dickens with the Planning Commission as well, and Stephen Benson with the City of Tampa Planning Department. Alan Steinbeck is our consultant for this project, and he will be leading the discussion through an interactive tool called Mentimeter. Please make sure you participate and follow the prompts from Alan. We have a lot of registered attendees tonight. This is actually the largest outreach meeting we have had for the comp plan update thus far. So I want to take an opportunity to thank you all for joining us tonight. The future land use section is a very important aspect of the plan, and we really appreciate you all taking time away from your families and hobbies to join us this evening. We will try to answer everyone's questions, but if there are some we cannot get to, we will post the question and answer to our website following this meeting. And instead of writing questions and comments in the question box, please write those questions in Mentimeter. The presentation is being recorded and will be uploaded to the project page a day or two after this meeting. Next, I would like to introduce our presenter, Alan Steinbeck with Pritchett Steinbeck Group.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you everyone for attending. I really appreciate your involvement and the time that you're putting into this tonight. This makes it a better project for us and really gives us some meaningful feedback on this very important topic of future land use. We will be using Mentimeter tonight. I encourage you to use your phone, although you can use a web browser on your computer that you can open separately from the GoToWebinar. You're going to go to menti.com, MENTI.com, and enter this code. If you have a phone, you can just take a picture of that QR code on the screen, and it should bring you into the Mentimeter environment. So please go ahead and do this. You'll see when we get into the feedback slides, you'll see at the top of the presentation that website and the code, and you can sort of catch up if you're a little bit behind. But we will be getting some feedback from you, live action feedback. It's going to be fun, and we're going to see results as we go through and talk about these topics. So the purpose of the assessment is to learn how the future land use categories and associated policies have been successfully working towards the goals of the Tampa Comprehensive Plan, as well as the vision for the 2045 update. This project is a Planning Commission project to support the comp plan update and is being conducted in partnership with the City of Tampa. We are working together on this as the Comprehensive Plan works in concert with the City of Tampa's Land Development Code and other policies that regulate development. And so we want to make sure that those things are properly aligned as we do this work. The Comprehensive Plan has future land use categories that you are probably familiar with. They are the regulatory tool used at the parcel level to guide and provide a framework for development. Specifically including what types of uses may be on a particular parcel, what types of residential densities in terms of dwelling units per acre, and what types of development intensities in terms of floor area ratio and the level of commercial development allowed on properties. There are also other parts of the comprehensive plan that try to shape places and make good neighborhoods and good districts within the city, and have special policies associated with the land use categories that guide and shape development. In the course of doing this 2045 update, which this work is a part of, a 2045 vision has been established that Tampa is in the future an inclusive, sustainable, and resilient city where the natural environment, historic character, and a diversity of cultures enable a vibrant setting for all. The Planning Commission has done some feedback already on this project. There was a big push in the beginning of this calendar year to get some general feedback about the plan and to help define the categories. We've summarized and have gone through all this data, and we heard a couple of things that are particularly important in this work in assessing land use categories. The first is that culture, diversity, and the unique character of Tampa is very important to people. People want these things preserved and celebrated. They have a strong sense of neighborhood identity associated with where they live. As you know, Tampa has many diverse and wonderful neighborhoods that have something to offer for many different people. Some people are concerned with change, and and change being a factor that might affect the sustained culture and diversity of Tampa. And many of people are calling for the diversity of housing and affordability in terms of needing to provide housing in the city for all income levels of people, and also for people who work in Tampa who need to live near where they work. In terms of development and transportation, this was a hot topic in the responses that were received by the Planning Commission. People generally want what I would call walkable neighborhoods with good connections of sidewalks, bike lanes, safe streets to walk on, but also connecting them to things that you can walk to, and having a diversity of uses, goods and services at the neighborhood scale. Again, housing affordability and access to jobs was important. Transit in particular was brought up by many people calling for the need for more transit in our community and having a system that serves all effectively out into the future. And then some concerns with traffic congestion. There are some places in the city where a relatively high amount of development has been built, and people are concerned about the traffic impacts of that. So that's a summary of what was heard previously, and the feedback we get tonight is going to be built on top of that. So I'm hoping everybody so far in the call has gone to menti.com and entered the code 3949-3651. It's now live action, ready, available for voting. So we're going to take this one a little bit slow so everyone can catch up if you haven't done so. But if you're using your phone or your computer, you can open a web browser for that website, enter that code. The first question here is, which of the following are true for you? Check all that apply. And I really do want all participants to come in and do this with us. In order to ask questions, in order to submit general comments at the end of the presentation, which we'll do, and to have this structured feedback, this is the primary focus of us having you here. So please go ahead and do that and join us in the responses here. So we want to know of those attending, who's living here, who may be a property owner or investor. Some of you may be in the development community or real estate, who own property. Some of you may just work in Tampa, and that's why you're interested in this, or be a business owner as well. So I'll give this another minute. We're starting to get up to where we're getting closer to our attendee levels here. I want to give people a chance to answer. While we're doing that and hoping that everyone gets logged in here to Menti, there is a question function. So we will be taking questions, as Jennifer alluded to. You can ask a question at any time. On your phone, you'll see a little bar that says Open Q&A, and that's, if you hit that, it will open up a dialog that will allow you to enter your question about this, and we'll be taking those questions at the end of the presentation. So if you enter your question, just know that it is in there, and we will get to it towards the end of the presentation. Okay, still some people got a question. Great. All right, so please do go to menti.com and enter that code. If you have the flyer with you that was sent around, that code at the bottom of the QR code at the bottom of the flyer will also work for you on your smartphone. All right, I'm going to move on for this. You can also at the top, if you haven't finished a question, it'll say the presenter has changed slide. You can hit cancel and finish answering, even though I am advancing to the next slide. So just know that. Regarding the Tampa Comprehensive Plan, how familiar are you with the future land use categories and how they function? So we recognize that not everybody cracks open the comp plan every day or reads the future land use element. We have done some listening about the comprehensive plan and people's ability to understand how it works and how it affects growth and development. Some people have said that it's a challenging first read to figure out what's happening, but we want to know for those of you on the call tonight, how familiar are you with this? And it looks like we're sort of squarely in the middle with some people not feeling familiar at all and some people feeling extremely familiar. And so here, if you're having trouble, just slide that dot across and you'll see the different answers that you can give for this, and then you hit submit when you're finished. And we do appreciate everybody logging in and participating with the answers. Not everybody's answering yet, so please do join us in this as soon as you can on your computer or your phone. Okay, next question regarding the Tampa Comprehensive Plan. How difficult is it to understand the future land use categories and policies affect development decision? So is it very difficult, very easy, or somewhere in between? How difficult is it to understand how the future land use categories and policies affect development decisions? A lot of you may be familiar with these in the meetings that are held at the Planning Commission, but also at Tampa City Council. This comprehensive plan is represented in each development decision as developments are reviewed against the policies in the future land use categories at that time. All right, looks like we have about 33 to 35 of you participating, which is great. I'm going to keep moving on here. Again, you can catch up if you are behind by hitting cancel at the top, finishing the question, and then moving on. So I want to know if how we feel about the direction of Tampa and where it's going. I've been familiar with Tampa for a long time. I first moved to Tampa 20 years ago when it was a slightly different place. There was certainly less going on certain parts of town, and a lot has happened. A lot has changed. There's been a lot of infill development. There's been a lot of public investment in infrastructure and parks and places in town. And all of this stuff has made Tampa a higher quality place to live, in my opinion, and increased access to economic opportunity, goods and services, and jobs. But despite all of that positive change, there's broad acceptance in the community that we need to address some of the wicked problems of affordable housing, transportation, resilience, and sustainability, knowing that there's still a lot of work to be done to make Tampa whole in all these categories and ensure that our future is a bright one. So I want you to think about these, and in this next slide, think about the recent past and the present situation, and tell us how much, if you agree or disagree with the statement. I believe Tampa is moving in the right direction. And I know this is a general question, but at the end of the presentation, there'll be some general feedback slides that will allow you to talk about why you feel this way when we talk about issues and opportunities. And you'll have a chance to type in and express your opinion about why you've given such an answer. Great, so I would say very positive view here. And if you see the little curve behind the 5.7, which is the average of every response, you see it's very much weighted towards the strongly agree with the statement. And very few people are down in the strongly negative territory or disagree with the statement on the call. So as you're participating in this, you can sort of read a little bit more into the answers by looking at that curve behind the answer here. Excellent. Okay, so that's a good overall general question. We'll get into some more detailed ones in just a second. We as a team of consultants and in partnership with the working group of staff that we're working with have done some initial assessment. And our overall findings, again, I believe that Tampa is a success story. There's going to be bumps along the way. It's not easy to grow. I grew up in Atlanta and watched Atlanta be completely transformed in my lifetime. And believe me, I recognize that it's not easy to grow in the way that Tampa is, but it is a success. There are some trade-offs with housing. The demand for housing is going to be very strong over the next 20 years. The comprehensive plan and the land use categories need to anticipate that. And there are some issues of limited supply, and in particular, some of the things that have been happening in the last couple of years indicate there's at least a temporary challenge with supply and demand issues with housing in the city, and therefore affordability of the ramifications of that. The transportation efficiencies that planners in Tampa have been talking about for a while have not quite yet been realized. We still need more transportation investment, including in transit, biking, walking, and road connectivity. Some placemaking, which is meaning making complete places, complete neighborhoods that function effectively, and targeted growth in some of our areas where growth is appropriate, in order to make sure that we're optimizing the use of our transportation network and making sure that all modes of transportation are usable for people in all areas of the city. There is an issue that we've identified in doing some analysis of Tampa's property and parcels, and there is a limited supply of developable land over the next 20 years. If Tampa keeps growing at the pace that it is, you will start to see a shortage of prime development sites in the city. Almost every piece of property has some sort of use on it currently, or something that it used to be in the recent past. So almost all of the new development in Tampa is going to be redevelopment of some kind, where something that exists now turns into something different, which has a whole different dynamic than some of the greenfield development and the development on vacant land that is occurring in other parts of the county and other surrounding counties. So in response to that assessment, we are going to continue to promote infill development in mixed use areas. We recommend doing that as a team. I recommend responding to planned infrastructure improvements to maximize the use of land, including for transit-oriented development. There's some work going on in the city right now being led by HART around TOD, and TOD is in transit-oriented development is an important aspect of land use planning. Addressing housing affordability and housing type concerns to ensure housing is available to different user groups. Because of the nature of Tampa's housing, there's a lot of smaller format housing units. We want to make sure we can accommodate households of different sizes and families in the city of Tampa as it grows into the future. And then revisiting and addressing density and design issues for development adjacent to existing neighborhoods. We do recognize that a lot of the development, the medium and higher density development in Tampa is new and different, and sometimes not the same as its surroundings. So making sure that there is consistency in design and quality of development that doesn't detract from Tampa's existing places. And then in terms of specific things that we're going to be recommending, these are the topics that we are going to be looking at in the study and making recommendations on. Emphasizing policies and regulations that affect those compatibility issues, like I said, possibly creating some new future land use categories for the comprehensive plan, where there may be some gaps in the categories that exist now. Looking very closely at the density bonus structure for mixed use projects, affordable housing, and transit-oriented development, working with the city as well on how the comp plan works with development decisions that happen and what goes on with the land development code. Promoting missing middle housing and workforce housing, missing middle being smaller housing projects and housing specifically meant for people of middle income. Allowing for accessory dwelling units in more areas, and potentially changing future land uses on the map and having some map updates where we have new categories applied to new places. So that's the thrust of the recommendations that are coming out of the work that I am helping the Planning Commission with. And there'll be reporting opportunities for review and further discussion of those specifics when those come out in the second half of the project. So that is my overview of sort of what we found in our assessment, and we're going to get back into the feedback now. So hoping you all get back with your phones or your screens. The next question is, in shaping growth and development, Tampa should strive to be more sustainable, equitable, resilient. So I would like you to rank those words in order of importance to you. There's a little bit short definition that you'll see below each one on the screen if you're not exactly sure what we mean by these. I know probably some of you are sitting there thinking, well, all of these are important to me. And I agree they're all important. But I think if you dig deep, you find that you really do have some values that you hold that maybe link you up with one of these over some of the others. So I'll give people a little bit of a second to go over this. Sustainable meaning efficient, responsible use of resources with stewardship of natural systems in mind. Equitable meaning striving for equal access to opportunity, inclusion, and fairness in decisions, especially public decisions. And resilient, able to resist and respond to negative effects of hazards, including flooding, storms, and other things that affect the physical place of Tampa. And it looks like a photo finish here, but looks like sustainable and equitable are sort of kind of running neck and neck for first place, which I would have maybe guessed. Okay, yes, thank you. Please keep voting. You can hit cancel at the top of the screen and keep voting if you're behind. Which areas of the city have benefited the most from development and investment over the last 10 years? Pick all that apply. Which areas have benefited the most from development investment over the last 10 years? If you're joining us late and you really don't know what's going on with the feedback, at the top of the screen there, you go to menti.com and you enter that code, and these questions will come up on your phone or your computer. I recommend using the phone if you can grab that. For those of you also joining late, we're taking questions via Mentimeter. You hit the bottom, at the bottom of the screen, you'll see an open Q&A bar once you go to menti.com, and that is where you'll enter questions. At the bottom right, I see we have 6 questions so far, and we're saving those for the end. So this one takes a minute. To think through, but you can select more than one of these as you answer the question. Great. I hope you're enjoying watching the live feedback come in. I'd love to see the answers come in. Downtown and adjacent neighborhoods is way ahead in first place here. And I think it's be hard to deny that downtown has benefited from some of the things that have gone on there. Currently, South Tampa there is the one that shows 19. West Shore is at 12. Ybor City is 9. New Tampa is at 9. And West Tampa is down there at 7. Interestingly, the other 2 that we had listed, Central Tampa, I-4 to Hillsborough, which is everything East Tampa, Southeast Seminole Heights, even you all in Riverside, I would say area, that would be you. Only got 3 votes, and Central Tampa, North Tampa area from Hillsborough to Fowler, including Sulphur Springs and areas up to the university area, only got 1, which doesn't surprise me because I think there hasn't been enough investment and enough improvement in that area through development. And we're talking about private development here as we review these. So I appreciate these responses. It's great feedback. I'm going to move on to the next question. Are there areas in the city where there have been pronounced negative impacts from development? So this is not little minor things, but places where you think development has had negative impacts that either could or couldn't be avoided based on what's happened over the past decade. So we're picking all that apply here. If you don't think there's been any, then you can put 0 and skip, or you can put the 1 or 2 that you think may be the most relevant to the question. And I know these letters are little, I can't do anything about it. The platform doesn't allow me to make the letters under the bars bigger. So I will try to help you demystify the feedback here by reading through them like I did on the last slide where we have these smaller words. So interestingly here, the South Tampa, people are answering that it has benefited, but also has disbenefits of development. at 9, and we certainly heard that in various ways as we've been doing the feedback to date about how that's gone down. Central Tampa to I-4 to Hillsborough, the area north of I-4 is currently in first place there at 11. West Tampa at 8, and Central Tampa and North Tampa, Hillsborough to Fowler is at 8 as well. Ybor City at 7. This one's a little harder because what you have to interpret this a little bit about what is negative, and I hope at the end we have the question about what issues there are, and you can elaborate on why you gave this answer at that time when we have the open-ended question that comes out. I do appreciate you all sticking with me. If you've put your question in the chat in the GoToWebinar, we're just going to copy it over to Mentimeter, so it'll show up in the queue. So as I'm asking questions in Mentimeter, don't feel like your questions got lost. It is going to show up on the list in the Mentimeter questions. Alrighty, I'm going to move on. What are the most important benefits of new development? Rank the following. So of the benefits that new development provides: economic development and job creation, housing supply and affordability, neighborhood and local access to goods and services, and the increase of the tax base and the fiscal health of the city. And we're talking about the fiscal health of the city of Tampa and public finances when we ask that question. I would say about this that there certainly is a relationship between housing supply and affordability that exists, and the laws of supply and demand do apply to housing. But housing affordability and availability of affordable housing is a much more complex issue than just pure supply and demand considerations. And just by posing this question, we do not believe that I don't that housing affordability can be solved by private development alone and just by creating a bunch of supply for it. It's a complicated problem of economics, of the need for public subsidy, and the need to write down the cost of certain housing for certain income levels, including especially those of moderately low and low income. But certainly development plays its role in providing the supply and having adequate places for people to live in the city. All right, appreciate the housing supply and affordability was the most important according to your responses. It looks like followed closely by neighborhood and local access to goods and services, and the other two coming in third and fourth. It's a little bit, I'm going to pause a second because there's a little bit of what I would call vote straggling. I think you're thinking it through. I'm hoping you're not challenged by the technology, but we're getting people coming in a little late. What types of housing are most needed in Tampa? Select all that apply. So this list includes townhouses, single-family homes, large-scale multifamily, and what we mean by that is everything from your typical apartment complex and the sort of the old school garden style to the newer apartment complexes that are being built, multi-story. Small scale multifamily housing, duplexes, triplexes, and quads that have a number of units in them, many times looking very much like single family or scaled like for single family compatibility. Mixed use projects with housing, which are some of the larger format apartments are being built with mixed use, but those have certain benefits to them of providing goods and services right there on the site, or other types of uses with other places. I would say the Midtown project in the West Shore area is an example of that, in West Tampa and West Shore. Senior housing, accessory dwelling units. You can also answer none or other or not sure. So a lot of support from the group for small scale multifamily. showing that 23 of you have said this. Mixed use projects with housing, accessory dwelling units, and townhouses. Other is bringing up the rear here, but single family is the lowest of those that are specifically stated there, the second from the right. Great. Not everybody on the call is voting. Please do go to minty.com and put that code in there at the top, and hope you all can participate in the live action voting in response here. We've got 14 questions. I'm going to keep going. What are the most problematic impacts of new development? Rank the following: lack of compatibility with the surrounding area, for example, in terms of height and scale; additional traffic congestion that's created from a project; lack of connectivity and support of transportation options, so feeling like a new project may be isolated and not well connected to what's around it; gentrification and neighborhood destabilization; pace of growth is, and last one is the pace of growth is too fast, meaning we can't keep up or address the impacts, the need for new infrastructure, the need for new services. Things are just changing too fast to keep up with what's going on. A lot of people have been saying this, and we put that answer in just test people's connection with that topic. So what are the most problematic impacts of new development? I want you to rank these. If, by the way, you can move these around with your finger on your phone, if you haven't figured that out yet. So if you change your mind, you can just sort of shuffle them around before we close this out, and you won't have to redo what you've done. May it help you out and make this a little easier. All right, so currently in the voting, we have additional traffic congestion being ranked as first, and lack of connectivity and supportive transportation options being second. By the way, when I say gentrification and neighborhood destabilization, I mean the stabilization that goes along with gentrification, where prices rise and people who live in a neighborhood can no longer afford to rent there in particular, and places become less and less affordable for the current residents to buy or otherwise be able to stay in a neighborhood. Great. Going to move on. When trying to ensure new development's compatibility with existing neighborhoods, rank the following in order of importance. So thinking about those new projects that show up in the city, I know a lot of you are active neighborhood advocates, and people who follow this closely. Others of you may not be that, but also may have seen things going up around town. Are the uses compatible? Meaning not just is it residential, but what are the non-residential uses that are being proposed problematic? And do that need to be controlled a little better? Does the orientation of the building make sense? Are people presenting the rear of the building to the neighborhood, for example, in a way that's not beneficial when there's a wood project near the neighborhood, or it's just generally not designed well in terms of how it's oriented? Distance from adjacent buildings, meaning, the setbacks and, how far away it feels from existing structures. And then I've put height of the new structure as the other one. So compatibility of uses is up there at the top. It'd be interesting to hear about the issue of compatibility when we ask about the issues question at the end. What types of development do you feel are not compatible? What are you referring to that you're seeing out there happening? All right. We are getting closer to the end. Just stick with us, and please do continue to provide the feedback here. How important is it to incentivize the following in our land use policies? And we're talking about the comprehensive plan here, and its role in enabling or specifically setting up these things. Affordable housing and new development projects, is it essential? Not, and all the way to the left, not a priority, and anywhere in between. Supporting transit-oriented development and having policies that specifically shape development around transit lines and transit stops that are appropriately optimized for different types and levels of transit service, like bus, streetcar, and potentially other types of fixed rail transit that may come to the city. Mixed-use development projects where there's been a long-standing initiative to incentivize projects to have something other than a single use, in particular residential uses having some commercial uses in them to improve the mix of commercial goods and services in neighborhoods as new development is constructed. And then redeveloping commercial corridors. Many of Tampa's corridors have older buildings. Some of them have been developed on and have new buildings on. There's much work to be done to keep the Tampa's commercial corridors up, improved, looking nice, being rehabilitated, revitalized, repurposed, and otherwise reused to accommodate new development, including residential development and non-residential development. Great, so everyone is feeling like these things are on the important end, nearing essential, with transit-oriented development and affordable housing and new development projects being those that seemed most essential. And then this is the first of the final two. This requires a little bit of typing on your part, and we're going to give this a second. We're going to definitely leave time for questions, and probably as you're typing, I'm going to start addressing some of the questions so that we can get through them. But we'll revisit what the responses are. So I want you to, even though I'm going through the questions and asking, please do start to put your feedback in that open-ended dialogue box. You can say everything you want but cuss words, because we've got that screened out on the call tonight. What other policy-based issues do we need to consider in assessing the future land use categories for the Tampa Comprehensive Plan? So talking about issues as translated to mean challenges or things that are plaguing you currently, or things associated with new development and the issues they cause. Remember on this, thinking back to the question, are we moving in the right direction? If there's some challenges with that, that would be an issue. What things are not compatible with potentially with existing neighborhoods, what types of uses, that sort of thing may be coming in. And feel free to type away a little bit. There's a little bit of room to let you provide some a full thought or sentence or two on these. So as you do that, there's going to be this slide, and then there's going to be the last of these slides talking about the opportunities. So if you're thinking about, I want to do something positive or have an idea that we need to consider that is proactive in nature or positivistic in nature, the next slide is going to cover that. We're really looking for the issues and challenges on this slide. So I'm going to start in with the questions. I may defer to Planning Commission staff on some of these, but I'm going to just try to address them in the order taken here and give a meaningful answer for each one we've received. I think Jennifer mentioned it, but if we do not get to all the questions tonight in the time allotted, we have 20 minutes scheduled for the remainder of the meeting. We will be answering them and posting something online and making sure that we try to address every question that comes through. Some of these may just be statements, but we'll see. So if your biggest concern about how a neighborhood is developing is clutching pearls over the height of a new structure, your priorities need readjusting. Okay, so a comment on that. I appreciate the clutching pearls thing. I'm from Georgia originally, and there's lots of pearl clutching going on there over all kinds of things. Hold on. go. Number 2. How, if at all, will this update reduce the burden of government regulation on private property and business owners, especially regarding parking mandates and limits on multifamily housing? One of the things that we've been hearing is trying to make it easier for people to redevelop and reuse their property. There's some challenges that exist in redevelopment and reuse of property and expanding property, dealing with uses that may be non-conforming, to put it in technical planning terms. And we collectively want to try to address that to make it easier to develop in the city. So that would be one of my answers to this. Parking mandates, there are the next generation of policy that is going to hit the city of Tampa. Most urban areas are addressing the what I would call old school parking strategies that exist in policies, and providing some flexibility, providing for reducing parking. We would encourage that as it makes sense, where this may be relaxed depending on use, depending on context, depending on adjacency to transit and what district you're in, that sort of thing. That's possible. Limits on multifamily housing. I don't know specifically what you're talking about, but Tampa has really allowed a lot of multifamily housing and provided a lot of places that can go. Perhaps you have some property where you feel like that may be appropriate and it hasn't been allowed or approved. It's not appropriate everywhere, but we're trying to make sure we can accommodate all types of housing in the plan and make sure there's enough of that. Info should relate to its local context. So how can the plan recommend high density, I'm assuming, over a large area near downtown? Nothing is affordable in spite of this. There are some issues with development around the edge of downtown. You have West Tampa, Tampa Heights, Ybor City, even that are sort of around the periphery of the core of downtown, and they're in various forms of evolution and transformation. I know there's been some specific planning and initiatives going on, and specific advocates in the city trying to work on that development and really shape the growth and development that's happening. The comprehensive plan does set out to address density and intensity and not address all of the issues. But I would say we do specifically have in this project to assess what's been going on in the areas around town, to look at what's happened, and to look at the densities in the plan. So, we will look at that topic, and it'll be part of the recommendations that come out of this. We do recognize there are people like you with these kinds of concerns. When will we see the change to allowing more accessory dwelling units? How do I gain information on this topic? Well, right now they are allowed in only certain areas of the city. It is a major policy decision to expand that footprint or to make it something that's looks more universal. Again, other cities have tried to take this on and have done it successfully. I believe that the predominant thinking is we should allow them in more places, and I think you'll see that recommendation coming out of our work, my team's work on this project. How do you gain more information? I think watching this conversation about this work would be a first step. Further, more specific policymaking will occur as the comprehensive plan gets updated, and of course the city has its own policy initiatives around this that would have to complement whatever the comp plan does in terms of setting up and this topic area in terms of where it might go. Yes.
Alan, sorry to cut you off, but I just didn't want you to go too far. Actually, I think Stephen has something that he'd like to add on this question, on the ADUs question.
Excellent.
Yeah, just for the ADUs, that will be an item on the City Council October workshop agenda. So if you're interested in being part of that discussion, check the city council calendar. I believe it's the 27th of October, where that will be discussed. Policy change will be discussed.
Great, thanks, Stephen. All right, this person's an identified troublemaker. There is not an answer for the entire city. It should be determined by the needs of particular areas along corridors. We do recognize that. I did not spend a whole lot of time tonight talking about the nuances of different places in the city. The comp plan is set up to try to address the unique character of different parts of the city, and this update will continue to make sure that the future land use plan, the categories and the associated policies are considered of context. Whether you agree with what's happening with development outcomes or not, specifically in a place, is maybe a different question. But the plan has in the past, tried to thoughtfully cover context of existing areas, and we're committed to doing that as we move forward. Where does it look like the school districts will change? I do not know the answer to this. Not tracking this at all, and I think it may be something that it's a little bit of a sidebar question.
Yeah, and I can just jump in and say that the school district is looking at boundary changes right now. I have a child in Hillsborough County Public Schools. They have information on that on their website, but that's separate from this project. So wanted to let everyone know that that's where you would go if you're interested in the school districts. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Melissa, for bailing me out on that one. So now I'm going to switch this. So as you all are listening to the question and answer segment of this, I've now moved the presentation to the last slide, which is what other policy-based opportunities do we need to consider in assessing the future land use categories. So if you have an idea for something that, again, you may want to add, may want us to consider, that is more in the solution space, I'll call it, then this would be the place where we would want to hear from you to advocate for those things. So please go ahead and think about that for a second and type away as we get through another bit of the questions here. Is the Planning Commission going to use the results of these surveys in any way? Yes, so we have our technical analysis that we've done as a team. We're doing some engagement here and some listening that we're doing in a general way in the meeting tonight. We've had some other sort of special purpose listening sessions and really trying to understand what people's issues are and their values are. So the technical work will be matched up with the listening. And then we have a technical team that is comprised of our company, Planning Commission, and City of Tampa staff, where we're really going at it and bringing our own professional skills to the table. So those three things between the technical part of the assessment and the policy review, the feedback, and our teams working at this are the three ingredients that are going to go into recommendations. This report will have recommendations that will feed into the larger comprehensive plan update. So it's not the final answer on what's going to go in the comp plan, but it will be given strong consideration in the final update and as the plan starts to take form over the next, I believe, year is the schedule you are on for the update. Any possibility to allow for floating wind turbines on water bodies such as bays and rivers? Yes, I don't know the permitting concerns of this as they relate to the comp plan. The comp plan regulates what happens on the terra firma and not so much in the water. But I don't know if there's anybody else on the call who may have a better answer for that in terms of allowability and permittability.
This is something that we'll probably have to put on the website as a question that we'll need to get back to. We can check with some folks and see what the latest is, but that's a little outside the scope of this process, but we'll try to get an answer to you. Thanks.
Thank you. Neighborhoods west of Florida Avenue and north of Sly, like Lowry Park, Egypt Lake, and Forest Hills, are never mentioned and seemed lost as if they are not in the city of Tampa. I agree with you. I've driven, one of the things I've loved doing for many years is just driving all over the city and visiting cities, neighborhoods. I've been all over the city many different times and to this area many times. And I agree with you. It does kind of feel a little bit lost sometimes as people are talking about it. I would say that, they're relatively stable places. So they don't get a lot of attention for that reason. But we will make sure to have an internal conversation about the unique characteristics and what's going on there. I believe we have some people at the Planning Commission a couple who live in that area. So we can definitely have some good conversations internally to try to make that more meaningful in what we talk about. So thank you for bringing that up. When will this update be effective? Do you at the Planning Commission have a date in mind?
Sure, Jennifer Malone with the Planning Commission. The update's going to be done in phases. So we're taking this as a phased approach. So the future land use section update, when it will be effective, it's really hard to answer that question right now because we need Alan's work to wrap up in early next year. We need to go through those recommendations, decide as staff how we're going to incorporate them in the plan, and then initiate an amendment. So no sooner than early next year, but it's hard to say exactly because we're taking a phased approach, and this is a really holistic overhaul of the plan. We're not just doing an audit and a little bit of cleanup. We're going to be drastically changing it. So it is going to be a little bit, but stay tuned on our website. We'll continue to post updates there. And we will also continue to have outreach as the sections move forward so you can stay involved throughout the process.
Yeah, and I just want to piggyback and add one more thing that for folks who may have not seen a comp plan amendment go through the process, when it's initiated, that's the beginning of the process when it goes to the Planning Commission, Tampa City Council. It's required to go up to the State Department of Economic Opportunity for their review. So when Jennifer mentioned getting initiated at the earliest, the early part of next year, when it will actually become effective would be several months after that. So just wanted to jump in and clarify that.
And I would add that there's sort of a beginning, middle, and end to the engagement process that's like this, which I would call general public engagement. We're in the middle of it. We're in the middle phase now, and there'll be another one. There'll be a vetting of what's being recommended that corresponds to and precedes the submittal and official formal initiation process. So everyone will get a chance to see the results of the work that we've all done together here. Are there any considerations to limiting single-family home purchases by large business? I think a lot of people have been considering this. It's very difficult to do. It is possible to do, but I don't believe this is a specific policy initiative of the city of Tampa at this time. And the city is working very hard on housing affordability in a comprehensive way, but this one has not hit the to-do list yet, as far as I know. Is this webinar just for City of Tampa or will it include Hillsborough County? We are taking feedback on the Tampa comprehensive plan, so this applies to everything in incorporated City of Tampa. Hello, to whom may concern, I would like to know how would the future land use development affect the East Tampa area business, such as Hillsborough Avenue East? Hillsborough Avenue East is interesting. There's been some major investment over there, and some bigger things have happened. But obviously maybe some opportunity for further investment that may support the residents of East Tampa and provide convenience for them. Hillsborough Avenue is kind of a little bit of a barrier if you need to go across Hillsborough from East Tampa to get to something. It feels that way to me anyway. But yeah, I think in general, some positive things have happened over there, but I don't know what's in the works for it. But certainly Hillsborough is a good example of a corridor in this area where infill, different types of uses, possibly some new housing, and with that housing, mixed-use projects that provide, smaller format retail and spaces that could provide some services for the area would be the ideal outcome. But I'm not sure the market is pushing for that at the moment. How many folks are in the meeting? As I see it, there are 54 attendees and 7 staff members on the call, including I would be in that 7 staff member count. What if the answer is none of the above? This question was asked on In Shaping Growth and Development, Tampa should strive to be. Hopefully you just answered 0 to that and skipped the question. If you don't think that Tampa should be equitable, sustainable, or resilient, I'd be curious to know what values do you have that aren't those. You could add that to the open dialogue that's going on around opportunities that's happening now. Too ambiguous. Who is the beneficiary, developer, taxpayer, resident? Poor question. This is about which areas of the city have benefited the most. Yeah, the idea of areas benefiting doesn't really fully address the complexity and nuance of who benefits. But we wanted to just get a general sense of people's opinion about is it positive or not. So noted that you felt like that was not addressing it in the way that you thought was helpful. The assumption is that all development is beneficial. It is not in the coastal high hazard area, but land ownership trumps all. Yeah, so I think it's become, it keeps getting increasingly important to consider this. And we have talked about it initially. We will talk further about the coastal high hazard area in this process and how to address development in that part of the city. Development in center, haphazard and erratic, so unpopular. Yeah, it does kind of feel that way sometimes when places aren't fully evolved, that it's haphazard and erratic. It's just a function of transformation taking some time. But not every project's a great project or immediately you can see the value in it. I agree with that. I think that's what you're getting at. If we redevelop our commercial corridors, how will suburban commuters get in and out of the city? Our shopping centers serve as highways for people who don't live here. Why change? Well, there's just such a strong demand for people to be in Tampa and to want to live in Tampa. It's not going to go away if we don't accommodate new development, new housing. You're going to suffer from housing affordability issues for a long time to come. There's really 3 places for people to go. One is neighborhoods, existing neighborhoods. One is centers like West Shore or downtown, and the other is our commercial corridors. There's no other place people can be. So it is important. I would also note to have them be able to accommodate change. I would also note that commercial corridors have buildings on them that weren't built to last forever, and redevelopment of them is important to make sure that the built environment, there's good stewardship of it, and that it doesn't sort of fall into disrepair and become a negative effector of the neighborhood and the perception of a neighborhood as people drive down them. And there's some places in Tampa where, some disinvestment in commercial corridors is challenging to the neighborhood context. So I would offer those thoughts to that. A lot of development in the city ignores the T3 plan. The T3 plan is what? Help me out with that.
Stephen, if you want to,
Sure, that's the Transforming Tampa's Tomorrow, the 5-prong.
The mayor's 5, yeah, okay. Yep.
Yeah. Which I would say that we're taking some of those concepts and considering how those principles should be incorporated or should be strengthened or emphasized. That would be part of this effort.
Yeah, and I would say now being reminded of what D3 means, some of those things are not specifically development driven. The solutions are public initiatives or things that are much more weighted towards a combination of development, public investment, and programmatic development that affects those issues of housing sustainability, workforce development, and the stuff that that plan talks about. We're kind of out of time. I'm going to try to go. I'm at the second to last question, so I'm going to try to do a home run here. Transit oriented implies that one day we'll have transit. Well, we do have transit. We have a citywide bus system that pretty much covers the whole city. There's a streetcar that may evolve to be a true old school city streetcar, like has happened in many different parts of the country, have now successfully reinvigorated their old streetcar alignments for getting people from in-town neighborhoods in and out of business districts. And I believe Tampa can successfully do that. And that seems to be on the books and in the works. Having light rail transit, like it's been talked about for many years, is a much bigger undertaking, certainly possible. It's happening all over the country. It continues to be funded, and it's just a matter of muscling that over the finish line at some point when the time is right, and many conditions have to fit into that in ways that are beyond the scope of that answer. So that's the best I can do for tonight. But I can talk to you more about that if you want to try to reach me. What are the future development plans for East Tampa? East Tampa is going to be a neighborhood of mostly single-family houses, very near downtown and very near to what is going on in Tampa Heights. I think if you're looking at Ybor City, your neighbors, Tampa Heights or South Seminole Heights, and wondering whether which of those three might be more like you, I would say that Seminole Heights and South Seminole Heights and some of the evolution that's happened with some housing being built, some neighborhood commercial, and some funkiness that I think is good and positive in terms of urban living and that sort of thing would be good for East Tampa, and that's probably more your fate than thinking about larger, bigger things coming there. I think it's going to be fairly stable over time. Getting close to the end, people keep asking questions. I appreciate it. I just want to go for another couple of minutes. I'm sorry. It's important to keep some historic buildings, make them reuse. The brick buildings are a wonderful representation of the diversity and history this area has had. I agree. There's a lot of it. There's a lot of work to be done, especially in housing and smaller buildings, especially in that area north of I-4, between I-4 and Hillsborough Avenue, to take care and care for those buildings. Buses don't connect Tampa to other locals. Will the plan encourage multiple community efforts on the transit issue? It is a tough one. As I was driving over across the bay, I was reminded of my thoughts on this, which is Pinellas is really far away. Pasco is a pretty long bus ride. Polk even feels further than that. And to the south, it's, again, you're talking about 45 minutes or more into town. So it's tough from a timing standpoint, and the ride that one has to take to even get there. And imagining people riding from other counties to connect to a Tampa service, to connect to the central part of Tampa or anywhere in the city it's a difficult proposition. You may be waiting a while on that one. Have we considered policy to reduce investor presence? We are currently harboring a large amount of investors. That is true. I believe investment money will slow down significantly in the face of what's happening in the housing market right now. And we will see some relief in both home price appreciation to the point of things becoming not affordable, and rent price appreciation. And we'll see those things reversing for a time where they will go down some. Last question I'm going to take of the night. Have we considered policy to cap or tax at a higher rate a business or person who owns more than 2 properties? I have not considered that. It's not entered the conversation, and we will talk about that and think about that. There are different ways to deal with the impact of investment property, in particular short-term rentals that I think are possible, that could be addressed here. So I'm gonna stop there. We're at 7:06. We'd advertised 6 to 7. I really appreciate you all sticking with us, and we'll just take this last question. If you do have other questions, you can contact us directly, but I do want to close this meeting out. Speaking of transportation, are there any plans on a bullet train county to county? There's the high-speed rail, which is being proposed from a regional standpoint, but no bullet trains or commuter rail or high-speed trains that serve just the region and intra-regional travel. Alrighty, folks. I appreciate all of the effort that's been put into the answers that we're getting on this. We try to read them. I thought answering the questions was probably a highest best use of time over reading these responses, but these responses will be documented and available for those of you who have been participating, and we'll get something posted on the website that shows the results of this conversation. So thank you. That's my last word. Any thoughts from you, Jennifer, before we close out the meeting?
Sure. I just want to thank everyone again for coming. We really appreciate your time tonight. That was a very productive, little over an hour, and we have a lot of really great feedback that we're going to use as we update the comprehensive plan and the future land use section specifically. Alan, how much longer is Mentimeter going to be open? So folks
Yes.
who maybe had technical trouble tonight might be able to log in, or friends and family can do it as well.
So we will have this open through the 29th. You can use the QR code that's on the flyer. You can go to Mincy.com and enter the code that's provided here, and you will be able to self-direct your way through this and provide answers. So anyone in your neighborhood, your family or friends or whoever, coworkers, can go do this at their own pace through the 29th. After the 29th, we'll close it down and all the results will be compiled. So they'll sort of add on top of what you all have shared tonight. It'll take me a couple minutes to get it set up to do that, but that'll be done tonight, and someone can go in later and do that on their own time.
Cool, great, thank you, Alan. And just one more thing, in case anybody wasn't at the opening announcement, this session was recorded. We're going to post it to our website, so you can always go back and watch or send it to anybody who you think might be interested. There is also a link in the chat. You can go to our website. We have a project page, planhillsboro.org/city-of-tampa-future-land-use-assessment. So the link is in the chat. That is our project page for this project specifically, where we're going to post this video, the PowerPoint, Mentimeter link, and all that, and updates. So please join us there for updates if you're interested.
Yeah, and I'll just real quick let folks know that if that is too long of a link, you can also get there from livegrowthrive2045.com. You can find the future land use assessment as part of the projects. And we'd love for everyone to continue to stay involved. This is one of the first sections that we're bringing forward, but there's going to be a number of other sections as well. So please sign up and join the Live, Grow, Thrive 2045 email list, and you'll continue to get updates about future meetings.
All righty. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks.